Welcome to Conversations with Asha and Steve, where communication matters. Join us as we discuss effective ways to communicate, bridge the gaps, and build long-lasting relationships within your business and life. Here are your hosts, Asha Prasad and Steve Harper.
Welcome to Conversations with Asha and Steve. I am Dr. Asha Prasad, and with me, my wonderful co-host, Steve Harper. Steve, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing, Asha?
I'm doing good. Conversations with Asha and Steve is a podcast show where we really get to talk about a variety of topics from well-being to relationships to entrepreneurship, how to manage your business, all of those wonderful things that everybody wants to know about. Because really, when it boils down to it, communication matters. Communication with each other, communication with your team members, and that's what we're really all about. So I'm excited today, Steve, about our topic. Today, we're going to be talking about how to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah, this is going to
So,
be a fun
Steve, do
one.
you get this question? You get this
Yeah,
question a lot, don't you?
we do. Yeah, and you and I talked about this. This is something that a lot of people, especially as we are kind of, coming through the pandemic, people are considering different career paths, different approaches to what they want to do, where they want to spend their time professionally. And
Yeah,
entrepreneurship is such a hot topic right now that this just made perfect sense for today's conversation. So,
definitely. So, let's dive into this. I
yeah.
think that there are several ways to think about entrepreneurship, and the first thing that I'd like to really mention to people is find something that you love to do. Really finding that thing that you really love that you can get lost in for hours and hours without any hesitation, and you just can, you're passionate about it. I think that this is one of the most important things. Sometimes you may not know exactly how the business is going to be, but if you've got an indication, like for example, for myself, helping people is like the center of everything that I do, no matter
Yep.
how it expresses itself. And that's something that I would advise people to really get to know is find something that you really love and enjoy that gives you energy.
So, let me ask you a question, as
Sure.
it relates to that. How was it that you settled on the work that you do now? And was it always something that was, I know you have this helping, giving heart. You always, are
Mhm.
certainly somebody that I can count on for, the best advice and guidance, whether it's health related or in my business, et cetera. But was it really when you decided as an entrepreneur, I'm going to dive in because this is something I know I've got skill and ability to do, something
Mhm.
I can be passionate about, and it's whatever time it takes to scale and grow the business, I know that I'm going to be investing in something that I truly love and I want other people to love it as well. Is that what you mean by love?
Yeah, I mean by love, exactly. I mean, I think it's one of those things that you fall in love with. You fall in love with whatever you're doing. And I think for myself, really about helping people in the health and well-being and now in the coaching and teaching realm actually and sharing that knowledge with people is something that I'm really passionate about because I've
Yeah,
seen how it changes people's lives on so many
exactly.
different levels. And I love that aspect of it. And I love passing on that knowledge to people. So it really is. It's something that you love, that you fall in love with, that and just like anything else or anybody else that you fall in love with, it takes work. It takes a lot of grit. You've got to be able, that's why I think it's so important to do something that you love because you're going to be spending hours and hours and hours doing it.
Yep.
So, I think that that's super important.
Absolutely. Well, and that kind of brings me to the next point I want to make, which is, you've got to
Hmm.
find an avenue to just get started, right? So there's the,
Yes.
hey, I'm thinking about this. I'm really, I think I would be passionate about it. But, at the end of the day, when rubber meets the road, right? And this is something that I
Exactly.
really, like you said, fall in love with. This would be my profession. This is my,
Hmm.
product or service or whatever I'm planning on bringing out to the world. The biggest challenge I see for people that are considering becoming entrepreneurs is really at the end of
Hmm.
the day, it's a lot of times people are stuck in their own head. They're not taking the necessary action. So I think the best advice in that
Right.
capacity is you got to get started. You got to just start,
Yeah.
right? Kind of like Nike said, just do it. You got to take one step
Yeah.
forward in order to get your business launched and focus your
Yeah.
energies and your efforts there. And so thinking back to my entrepreneurial journey, when I decided that I wanted to, start my own company, I started doing
Mhm.
all sorts of research and putting together sort of my game plan, my business plan, and
Mhm.
starting to talk it up to people that I knew that would be out there, that would
Right.
be potentially either customers that would buy from me or potential supporters of my business. But every
Mhm.
action that I took on a daily basis really geared towards taking that step forward, right? Making the business
Right.
more of a reality, and it really takes that action and that effort.
Yeah, definitely, Steve. I have a question about that. What would you suggest for our listeners out there, someone that's contemplating, like what if there is one thing that you would say that's the first step that you need to do, what do you think it would be? Like what would be some, I know that that's kind of tough because there's so many different things that you can do, but what do you think that that one thing that somebody out there listening could do?
I think by taking a look, it's funny because I think a lot of entrepreneurs think that they have to start something from complete scratch, right? And
Right.
you and I can probably kind of chuckle about that because there are no original ideas. It's almost all been thought
No.
of. There's new technology and new things that are being invented every single day, but how many different versions of a cell phone do we need, right? At the end of the day, if they had just stopped, we wouldn't have the next
Exactly.
iPhone 13 or the next, Samsung or whatever. So I think
Yeah.
that success leaves clues, right? And so the first thing that I would suggest is that you look at who your audience is for whatever product or service that you might be
Mhm.
starting. Look at where they are, how they spend their time, what problem you're looking to solve, and then look at who else has maybe come before you that you can learn
Mhm.
from. And I think a lot
Yeah.
of times people get caught up in the fact that, oh, there's yet another company doing it. Maybe that's not a good, solid business opportunity for me. In fact, no, it's validation that you have a market. There's an opportunity
It's
there
true.
because somebody's out there doing it. And I'm not saying you necessarily have to go copy or steal from them per se in terms of the idea, but you have a passion and a focus in a very similar path. Your delivery just may be different. And what can you
Right.
learn from that existing business or that existing market that can teach you how to make yourself different and how to do it better? So that's
That's a
really,
great advice.
that's what I'd say. What
That's
about
really,
so
really good advice.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think it's key, and I think where a lot of people actually get stuck is they just get stuck in their own head, and then they get
Yes.
discouraged because they're like, well, there's already X amount of companies doing it.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. I saw a statistic recently that the microbrewery industry here in the U.S. has just
Mhm.
exploded. How many IPAs do we
Cool.
need? Well, as many as you can give me. I'll take them, right? At the end of the day, there's a
Exactly.
market and an opportunity, and it really comes down to why each company is a little bit different and what their
Yeah.
unique offering is. And I think that's the value because that's one of the critical factors I think that differentiates yourself for sure. What's
Yeah, no,
another
that's great.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, 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 go ahead. Go ahead. I just was gonna say, you know what, that's a great thing to realize and to talk about because you know what, a lot of times people before they even get started, they'll talk themselves out of it because
Yeah.
they think that they can't stand out, that they can't do things uniquely enough. And it only takes, your own flair to do something different that people are going to be attracted to. So,
Absolutely. Which
yeah,
actually feeds us to the next point that we wanted to make, which is,
exactly.
you
Become a
you
student
you
of
hit this one.
entrepreneurship. Yes, become a student of entrepreneurship. Now, this one I think is key because, first of all, whenever you're first starting, even before decide on your business, whatever, talk to people, talk to other entrepreneurs out there, go interview people, sit down, go have a cup of coffee with them, pick their brains, do your research, read a lot of books, learn, and you just realize you're going to be consistently a student of entrepreneurship.
Yep.
I mean, even after so many years, Steve, for yourself, for myself, we are still constantly learning things. I mean, constantly.
Yeah.
And you have to love to be a student. And you have to be able to embrace that. But I think if you start that from the get-go and realize that there's never really like a place that you just reach where there's no growth, right? I
Yep.
mean, wouldn't you say that,
Absolutely.
Steve? Like, how about what do you think about that?
Without question. I actually just saw a movie that was around Steve Jobs' life, right? And talking about sort of his,
Mm,
the second time he came back to the company and what he was doing and ultimately, to put them on the path that they're on now, which is just one of the most
right.
unbelievable companies in the world, right? But at the end of
Hmm.
the day, he spent a great deal of time studying what it would take to have design flair and
Yeah.
color impact and shape and understanding the sculpture of the approach. And you're thinking about, well, that what does that have to do with the laptop, or what does that have to do with a desktop
Right.
computer? At the time, IBM and Dell and a lot of other digital equipment at the time, it's not even around. They didn't think anything about that. They were not
Right.
evolving. They were not studying what was going to move people to want to purchase. And you think about
Hmm.
where Apple is today, and much of what people are attracted to is the design aesthetic, the approach that they've taken to making the experience so much more seamless. And I think back
Right.
to that piece of what he was doing was he was taking pieces of what he was learning, what he was experiencing in his own life, areas of interest that he was becoming an entrepreneur to say, how do I learn how to apply those things to a business to help it go
Hmm.
and move to scale? Like the iPod is an example, right? For those of you that
Right.
are like, maybe a little bit younger, you're like, what's the iPod? The iPod was, music in our pocket, right? It was they
Right.
were taking on an industry that was accustomed to, Sony Walkmans with tapes, right? And
Right.
this was an established, mature industry, and he rethought the industry because he was looking at how to do things differently. And I think when you have that student mindset, you're constantly looking at how do I make things better? How do I
Yeah.
improve? And that's true whether it is perfecting your idea or it's perfecting your business and operation. And I think you just
That's
never
true.
give up. I was on a call earlier today and had an entrepreneur that made a recommendation about a book that has been a game changer for them. And I immediately got
Okay.
it, right? Because I am
Yeah.
51 years old. I don't have all the answers for my own businesses all the time, right? And I'm
Right.
perpetually looking out for the next great idea. So for your point about being a student of entrepreneurship is really critical.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I think it's something that you gotta love to do is really that learning aspect. So that brings us to our next twin, Steve.
Absolutely. I say set realistic goals, right? At the end of the
Yeah.
day, this was important to me because I think that especially new entrepreneurs, their eyes are wide open with possibilities, and there's all this excitement around your business and the venture that you're starting. But I think
Hmm.
you have to get really good at the fundamentals. You have to be focused on the blocking and tackling, and you have to also understand that there are expectations for what you do and how you do it. And
Hmm.
I think you've got to set realistic goals that are achievable, that show a track record of
Yeah.
success, because that will only build your confidence and help you believe in what you're doing. But then you establish new sets of goals. And you have a very
Yeah.
interesting plan on how you do this for your business. Would you share that with everybody?
I mean, I definitely, you know what, this is something that it's evolved over the years. And I have found for myself what really, really does help is having a plan, like doing a quarterly check-in.
Yeah.
And, doing that quarterly check-in to me is really, really important because I have found in business over the years that things shift and change so quickly. And especially in this day and age, I just feel like it just changes so quickly. And a lot of times, some of the goals that maybe we set out for the year don't really apply. Even after the first quarter or second quarter, we're like,
Yeah.
well, actually, we have to pivot here. We have to take a shift. We have to change. We have to
Right.
course correct on this. And so when you're doing that and you're checking in with that, on a quarterly basis. And I know people, I know entrepreneurs that do it on a monthly basis, whatever works for
Yeah.
you. It is really, really important. So that way you can assess and be able to shift in a moment's notice. And I really like that because it keeps the business also dynamic. It doesn't feel stagnant. It doesn't feel like, okay, in January, I set this goal and now we just have to push it through, even though we're not feeling it or the market is not responding,
Sure.
that you can actually course correct along the way.
Absolutely. I often work with a lot of startup entrepreneurs, and everybody thinks that hitting that $1 million threshold, that's I got to do
Right.
$1 million in that first year. You know, if you have built the infrastructure and you've got the team to help support that, great,
Hmm.
fantastic.
Yeah.
But most startup entrepreneurs, it's just you, maybe one or two other people, and
Exactly.
it's a struggle, right? You're slogging
Yeah.
through just to establish yourself in whatever business arena that you're in. And I think when you set too high a goal, when you don't achieve it,
Mhm.
it compromises your confidence. And so
Yes.
I think one of the things that you're talking about there is that you're setting these up in bite-size, iterative kind of
Mhm.
approaches to your goals. So what am I
Yeah.
accomplishing this week? What am I accomplishing this month? What do I want to
Yeah.
accomplish this quarter? And if I'm doing all the things right and I'm hitting on all of my cylinders, maybe I
Mhm.
will get to that $1 million or $10 million or wherever.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times, everybody feels like you have to be success. They gauge entrepreneurial success by, the tens of millions of dollars your company is putting
Right.
on. And the reality is that maybe your realistic goal was, hey, I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to show I could make money. I could pay myself. I could pay my team. And I want to be able to be in a position where it's cash flow positive and growing. Those
Exactly.
goals are when you do that and you're like, well, yeah, I got that. Checkbox, checkbox, checkbox. All of a sudden now, well, okay, what else can I do? Right. So I'm just a big believer, especially when you want to become an entrepreneur, is that you don't reach for the stars just yet. Just
Mhm.
focus on the sky. Try to get to those clouds and
Yeah.
figure out where, these small iterative goals can come into play and help support you in what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I think that that's really key. I think it's important because it keeps you motivated too. And you know what? Yes, we do know people that have hit those goals like
Yeah,
way beyond their goals, and that's great. But keeping it realistic will help you. It'll help you be inspired and motivated to hit the next goal. So yeah.
absolutely.
So
Well, we'd love to continue this conversation. And one of the ways that we would encourage people to get involved in this show and
mhm,
participate literally in the conversations that we're having is to take it from whether you're seeing this on YouTube or you're seeing it on Facebook or you're just
mhm,
hearing it in the podcast, one of the podcast platforms that Conversations with Asha and Steve
mhm.
is on. We'd like you to be an active participant. Tell us what your thoughts were. What did you think of our 4 points?
Yeah.
And were they helpful? Were they useful? Did you find if you were an entrepreneur, were these things that you experienced? What other tips should we include in a future episode in
Right.
this particular area? So, Asha, how do people get in contact with us? How do they get involved and active in the Conversation with
Yeah.
Asha and Steve community?
So we love hearing from people, and so I just want to invite them to really visit our website, conversationswithashaandsteve.com. You can reach us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and just message us, or even drop a comment wherever you're catching this video. Drop a comment, and we will get back in touch with you. So we do
Absolutely.
really appreciate everybody that joins us, and we take all the input to heart when people are sending us input and questions. So and just remember that some of the most profound conversations happen in passing, and conversations do matter.
Yep, absolutely. And I am so grateful to have these conversations with you, and I can't wait for our next one.
Looking forward to it, Steve.
All right, take care.
All right, you too.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Conversations with Asha and Steve. We love to hear feedback and questions from our listeners. Please feel free to visit our Facebook page for more tips and information. You can also email us directly at info@ripplecentral.com for more information.